Hey, everybody. It's a given that nobody enjoys paying taxes, but they're a fact of life in the United States. That said, taxpayer dollars should never be used to fund illegal activities. Whether you're white or black, male or female, tax dollars also shouldn't be used for discrimination, whether it's to oppress a certain group or to give a group an unfair advantage over everyone else. And finally, taxpayer dollars should never be used to overthrow our system of government. Our government is the longest running and most successful government in the modern world. However, as you're about to find out, these things are happening across the United States every day. The Free Beacon reports USAID spent $89.7 million finding jobs for 55 Afghan women. Let's go ahead and touch on this article a little bit. A federal government program to promote gender equality in Afghanistan and help women find employment is costing U.S. taxpayers, that's not just taxpayers, U.S. taxpayers, over $200 million, but has only found jobs for 55 women. The USAID program promoting gender equity in national priority programs, or PROMOTE, is a 5-year, $216 million effort. USAID has spent $89.7 million in 3 years, but has not demonstrated whether the program has made any progress toward its goals. Promote is USAID's largest single investment to advance women globally and was tasked with helping over 2,000 Afghan women find jobs. The program has reached just 2.6% of its goal. So, what are the takeaways here? Well, first, $200 million of U.S. taxpayer money was set aside to fund foreign feminism. That's almost $1.5 million per woman. Basically, they could have just made these 55 women millionaires. Somebody looted the money somewhere, right? Let me tell you how successful feminism is. It says so right here in the article. It has less than a 3% success rate. That is feminism. Feminism fails. You adopt feminist ideology, you are guaranteed to fail. If you don't believe me, look at the government of Sweden. Sweden is the first feminist government in the world, and it is an abject failure on the verge of civil war. They have over 60 no-go zones across the country. With that in mind, my question is this: why isn't this money being used to eradicate homelessness in the United States, or some other purpose that the U.S. taxpayers can actually see a return on their investment? The thing about this is a perfect example of how feminism steals U.S. taxpayer dollars. All right, now let's move on to the next article. Public university removes white instructor for telling students to be respectful in class. This is from the College Fix. A white biology instructor who repeatedly warned her students to behave themselves has been yanked out of the classroom for the semester and required to undergo classroom management training. The University of Texas San Antonio cleared Anita Moss of showing racial bias toward a black student who has a history of being disruptive by calling campus police on her. But a second investigation faulted the senior lecturer for telling students throughout the fall semester to be respectful in class by keeping their feet off of chairs and putting away their phones and not talking. Moss even asked one group of students to separate for the rest of the semester, as they were causing constant disruptions, according to the report by Howard Grimes, the interim dean of the College of Sciences. The student whom Moss called the police on never filed a complaint and has since apologized to the instructor for her behavior. Moss may have escaped sanctions altogether, including 3 years of probation, if not for another student who posted video of campus police leading away the disruptive student. So, what are the takeaways in this article? Well, first and foremost, the University of Texas clearly thinks asking for respect in class, or apparently anywhere on the college campus, is somehow racist. The second takeaway is this: white women in the United States? Congratulations. You're now second-class citizens to minorities. The third takeaway is this: when you're being harassed and you end up having to call the police on your harassers, they retaliate by calling you racist and by witch hunting your job. And then finally, this is taxpayer-funded racism against white people. Why is it allowed to continue? Let's move on. Student cooperative stays silent on a no whites allowed student housing. All right? A student housing group associated with the University of California, Berkeley is staying silent regarding questions about its not white person of color student housing, a facility that one official says is not meant for non-minority students. The Berkeley Student Cooperative's Person of Color House was opened in the fall of 2016 with the goal of increasing inclusivity for low-income students and students of color, according to a report in the Daily Californian at the time. The housing option was created as part of an effort to create a safer and more inclusive space for historically and presently marginalized low-income students of color and those from multicultural backgrounds, according to the cooperative's website. The housing is equipped with 56 bed spaces and is wheelchair accessible. University of California, Berkeley spokesman Dan Mogulof, damn, that's an unfortunate name, directed the college fix to reach out to the cooperative directly, writing via email that the organization is a fully autonomous, legally independent organization over which the university has no authority or supervision. Think about that for a moment, all right? And let's discuss kind of the takeaways of this particular article. Now, this group discriminates against white people because segregation is discrimination. There is case law all throughout the United States courts that discuss this. So not only are these people discriminating, they're bigots. Because if they're inclusive like they say they are, they would include white people. But the college isn't taking any action against this racism. And even if they're independent, at least college officials should speak out. They should at least condemn them. And then I guess my question about this article and about this particular group is this: who funds them? I mean, somebody should be trying to look to figure out who is funding the racist policies of this group, of this cooperative. Obviously, it's being funded by somewhere. The money just didn't fall out of the sky. Who's funding them? Is this another Southern Poverty Law Center stealth operation where they're throwing money to them under the table like they do Antifa terrorists? I mean, who is funding these people? That's a concern. All right, let's move on. Now, the Western Journal reports, thought police, public universities' rules now prohibit offensive facial expressions. We've known about the alarming trend of coddling and control at colleges for a while, but it may be getting worse. At the publicly funded University of Montana Western, college administrators seem to be doing their best Big Brother impressions. That university recently published a policy which threatens punitive action against students for making, wait for it, mean facial expressions. While discussions may become heated and passionate, they should never become mean, nasty, or vindictive in spoken or printed or emailed words, facial expressions, or gestures. The official civility standards at Montana Western declared. Who decides what a mean facial expression looks like? Nobody seems to know. So here's the thing. This policy is not only unenforceable, it's Orwellian. This is what your taxpayer dollars are going to. This is going to be used as a witch hunt to attack those who speak out against social justice bigotry. I mean, think about it. How are you going to handle somebody who is agoraphobic and they're walking across a wide area from one class to another and they're having problems and they have a mean facial expression? Is that person now being racist? Is that person now not being inclusive? What about a person who, let's say they're super heavy set and they're sweating and they're having difficulty because they weigh 500 pounds at 5'4" and they're walking from one class to another. They're sweating, they're angry, they're frustrated, their face is beet red. Are these people going to get expelled from the college for being fat? And who judges what facial expressions mean? I mean, different facial expressions in different cultures mean different things. So again, this is completely ridiculous. It's completely Orwellian, and it is an excuse to witch hunt people. It gets a lot worse. The Gateway Pundit reports Oregon governor budgets $4 million to sue Trump and defend illegal aliens. Okay? Governor Kate Brown unveiled a $23.6 billion budget proposal on Wednesday that plugs holes in state health funding, seeks to gain ground in an ongoing housing crisis, expands access to voting, and sets aside millions for challenging the policies of President Donald Trump. Making the case that this is Oregon's best chance in a generation to address persistent structural changes, Brown's proposed spending plan also includes a $2 billion challenge to state legislators, listing a host of improvements she'd like to see in this state's flagging education system if lawmakers can agree on a way to fund them. $4 million to fight the Trump administration in court. Half of that money would go to an Oregon Defense Fund and pay for ongoing and forthcoming lawsuits filed by the state against the federal government. The other half would pay for the defense of immigrants who were in deportation proceedings. Now, there's a lot of bullshit to unpack in this, so let's go ahead and get started. All right. It should be obvious. This is a misuse of taxpayer funds for a feminist witch hunt. Okay? Illegal aliens, people who are in violation of federal immigration law, guess what? They already get free help through the Federal Public Defender's Program. Federal money is already allocated to this. By allocating state money for federal issues, we might be talking about a constitutional issue here or a violation, and it might also be a crime because this is a misuse of state taxpayer dollars. And more importantly, this is what happens when you put social justice warriors and feminists in power. They steal your money. Feminism and social justice bigotry cannot survive without stealing money from taxpayers through the welfare state. We've seen this in Sweden. We've also seen this in Venezuela. And every country that promotes this type of social justice funding where they're stealing money from taxpayers, it fails. Okay? Nothing says fuck you to Oregon taxpayers like stealing their money for feminist witch hunts and protecting federal criminals. Let's move on. Okay, the campus reform reports, Illinois Women's Studies Department, abolish ICE and police. All right, let's look at this. An Illinois Gender and Women's Studies Department endorsed a call for the abolition of both ICE and the police. The University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign's UIUC Gender and Women's Studies Department shared this demand from a 9-point platform created by the National Trans Youth Council 9-point platform, prefacing the Facebook post with something to believe in. We call for the abolition of the police, ICE, borders, and the judicial system. All right. What are the takeaways here? This is a direct attack on the United States. They don't want the United States to have borders. Without borders, the United States ceases to exist as a country. This is also a direct attack on the due process rights and the constitutional rights of Americans. By advocating this, they are advocating for the overthrow of the United States government. The United States government is a tricameral government. In other words, it has 3 branches: the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. By advocating for the destruction of the judiciary, they're advocating for the destruction of the United States as we know it. This is what your taxpayer dollars are going toward. Okay? This organization should be shut down. There is no way that a college should be allowed, especially a state-funded college or a college that is funded with either state tax dollars or federal tax dollars. There is no way that a college like this should be funded in this way. There is no way that we should be funding for the destruction of our country. In conclusion, feminists and social justice warriors hate the United States because our laws and our Constitution, while imperfect, work to level the playing field and have built-in checks and balances against all kinds of witch hunts, including these. So, as you move throughout your day, I want you to ask yourself the following questions. Why hasn't the mainstream media focused on the fact that American taxpayer dollars are funding this bigotry? Why aren't elected officials speaking out against wasting our taxpayer dollars in this way? And finally, why is our government allowing our taxpayer dollars to be used to promote crime and discrimination? So here's the thing. In the medical profession, they say that in order to cure the patient, you first have to identify the problem. The problem here is that U.S. taxpayer dollars are being used to fund bigotry, crime, and the overthrow of the United States government. Now we know what the problem is. We need to start working on a cure. I'm DDJ, and this has been your dose of misandry today.